Real is a family of educators from that's who we are. When I think about Real, our Real MAC Advisory Committee, it's a family of educators from all backgrounds and cultures who have come together to be and to help others be more aware, more reflective, more inclusive, as practitioners, so that we can have a brighter tomorrow as we, try our best to transform New Jersey public education system,
Thank you for tuning into the Real Storytellers. This space was created to allow you to meet some real ones, those engaging in racial and social justice work, and to allow you to cultivate your own journey. These members are real, their stories are real, and their work is anchored in everything the Real movement represents. Welcome to the Real Storytellers. I'm your host, Angel Booz, and today we have a special guest with us, Dr. Tiffanie ThrBak. All right, and we're going to jump right into our interview. So, Dr. ThrBak, please tell us who you are and or what you do.
So, I am a teacher. I've been in education for about 28 years. I work with, I've been in different capacities. Started out as I started out as a paraprofessional in the classroom, and then immediately went into position as the homeless student coordinator. I've been a school social worker. I now teach students with special needs from behavior. I'm in a self-contained class from behaviors, ADHD, students on the spectrum, you name it. I'm also the chair of the Minority Leadership and Recruitment Committee. I'm the state chair for that. I am a educational consultant with NJEA in the PD division. I am a wife, a mother, a grandmother. So I wear many hats. I'm in my church, so I wear many hats.
And I was going to say, I'm glad that you acknowledge all of those hats, because all of those hats make you who you are and have prepared you to do this work. I did not know many of those things about your history, so it was very interesting hearing some of those things and where you came from and where you are today. So I acknowledge your journey, and I'm just super proud of, your growth and where you are. So
thank you.
You're welcome. Now, can you share a story about a time when you knew you wanted to become a professional educator?
So I often tell this story when playing as a kid, because, I had an older sister and cousins. We played school, and I hardly got the opportunity to play teacher. So I way back then in my childhood, that's when it happened. But I believe it was, basically in my DNA to become a teacher, because when I went to, after I graduated high school, I went right into youth ministry, teaching youth in my church, from Bible study to our Friday night talk sessions. I created a program called How to Be for young men and women to learn how to be productive members of society. Taught Sunday school. I volunteered tutoring at Rutgers when I was in college. So, one of my first jobs was a residential counselor right out of school, working with autism. I had 2 full-time jobs because I got one job one month, and the very next month I got another job with the school system. So I had 2 full-time jobs, working as a paraprofessional and then a residential counselor for students with autism, teaching them life skills and being a paraprofessional. So I knew early on that was, where I wanted to be.
Absolutely. And I think that background has made you an even better educator, because you can bring all of that experience and your knowledge of how to deal with people into the classroom. Now, in your work as an educator, can you share a story about the moment you became aware that racial equity is critical to our work?
I'm going to say that as a students in transition, which we coined it later on in my position, or homeless student coordinator. I did a PD for the superintendent's cabinet on homeless education. And at that time, we were identifying about 300 students in transition a year right here in Bridgeton. And the current superintendent, right after that presentation to the cabinet, because, you know, it was all kind of educators in the room, from principals to curriculum coordinators, all of those in the room. When I, you know, asked, you know, can I do this PD? And when it came, after I finished, she basically said, you need to go into teaching, go get your certification. And I'm like, wow. She said, because, you know, we need more people in the classroom that look like you. She was Dr. Geraldine Foster. I believe she was the first African-American female superintendent in my school district. And she was just phenomenal. And I guess, you know, what she said, she's like, you were so passionate about presenting and how you did it. She said, we need to see that in the classroom. And so the next year I took like a $5,000 pay cut and there I was, you know. A more poignant time, I'll say, was my first or second year at the RA. I believe it was in 2016, the death of Philando Castile. So I wrote an MBI encouraging NEA to speak against racial violence by the hands of the police. And for me, you know, this was, you know, I'm new to this, but I'll never forget it because we just had a discussion on the floor in New Jersey, if you're familiar with RA. We had a discussion on the floor of whether or not to support this NBI surrounding new business item surrounding white privilege. And it got like a real, you know, deep discussion, you know, people, you know, coming up, you know, saying, no, we shouldn't. And you had a few coming up saying that we should. And many, you know, there were some that really didn't want to support it because they didn't believe it. Right. And the very next day we woke up that morning and we saw the murder of Philando Castile. And, you know, he was one of us. Mm-hmm. He was an educator from Minneapolis. And I took to the mic nearly in tears that morning, explaining why this NBI was so important, because it was a senseless death. You know, he did everything he was taught to do. As a mother with 2 Black male seeds and as a grandparent with another, it hit home for me. So, you know, I told my fellow educators on the floor that day that, you know, you don't have to worry about your son being pulled over and shot because, you know, just because he's Black. And even after you know, taught him to do everything right. So I believe that was another part that hit home for me, like, boom, you know. And, you know, I wrote another, you know, a NBI, you know, pertaining to that.
Now, at the NEARA, how did everything go with passing that NBI?
It got passed. I had my fellow, because I was nervous. That was my first year. You know, you're getting on the floor speaking to, you know, thousands of fellow educators, and I had seen them. So it was the second year when I presented my second year there in 2016, and I had seen them the year before. And I tell this story often. It was my first time. I was nervous, and they had booed down, almost not booed down, but shot down, to me what felt like a boo, the fact that the NBI of getting the NEA to go against the use of
excessive force.
No. This year before, they wanted them to go against the use of the Redskins.
For the football team, yes, for the football team.
To speak against them. So you think about, this was in 2015 or 2016, and so I'm new, right? It's my first time, and I'm sitting there witnessing all of this, and I'm like, wow, these people really love football. They don't care. You know what I'm saying? this chief, this Native American, this chief, he came in all his garb and he said, this is what Redskins mean. And he talked about it. And it just, he talked about they not only skinned the males, but they skinned females, the scalps off of females, elderly and women and babies. Right. And so to hear them with such rage to say, no, that was like, whoa. So, for me, like, whoa, wait a minute. I gotta pay attention. I'm looking around, get off your phone. Come on. We need to, speak to these types of inequities and things that, if we have the opportunity and on a national forum to speak against and to these types of things, let's do it. And so there's, where the whole, more passion for me to create that NBI surrounding Philando, Castile, that we speak against racial injustice.
Right. And it's crazy how people's ideals around entertainment and mascots and historical figures
right
haven't existed or been around for hundreds of years,
right,
seem to outweigh what's happening currently in our society. It's crazy to me that people can't comprehend how much change is necessary, but they hold true to their ideals though. They will fight to the end, even though they are dead wrong.
It took 6 years, 6 years, since then, here we are in 2021. And I'm like, look, imagine if, we had, taken up, the mantle, to go forward with that, because it happened, it came to fruition. Thank God, it came to fruition to denounce that, the use of that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm glad that the change happened as well. So Dr. ThrBak, can you describe your relationship with the real movement?
Woo. Well, let me go back just a little bit. Before Real, as a member of the Minority Leadership and Recruitment, we were charged to identify and recommend ways to attract multi-ethnic members to the school employees profession, and be responsible to hold and set up potential workshops surrounding issues of culturally responsive teaching and restorative practices, right? So I was doing that and used to doing that every year under that task. And then as a classroom teacher, I knew to share in a way that allowed me to help my students to see themselves in the curriculum. If they didn't see themselves in the curriculum, I'm bringing in information and ways to teach and things that weren't in the curriculum, bringing in the curriculum so that they can learn and be proud of who they are, be they Black, Brown, Indigenous, Latinx, whatever. So in my class library, there were books of Brown and Black students. I encourage my Latino students to not be ashamed and of speaking their language, not be ashamed of who they are, because they used to, when I asked them, who are you, where you come from, what's your background? They used to be ashamed to say their language, or even say that they're Mexican, because, when the influx. And I'm like, be proud of it, state it. And so for me, I grew in Real in that, not being able to put a name in it, so the Real movement allowed me to dig deeper, right? In a way that, as when I brought up that example of the language and fitting in, it wasn't until, this past year through the Real movement that I found out what acculturation was, right? Not knowing there was a word for it, or about resistance capital. A lot of times you get some of my Latinx students not wanting to use their name. I had a student named Yelisalis, right? And she would just tell people to call her a more modernized name. You know, I guess maybe she didn't want people to keep messing up her name. And I said, no, that's part of who you are. You know, make them say your name right, you know, and that was a part of resistance, right? And I didn't know until I got with Real that, you know, that was almost like innate in me, right? I was already doing it, but I found we learned about the CCW model, you know, that community cultural wealth. And a part of that is the resistance, going against the grain, and encouraging my students not to assimilate into society's dominant culture, that you actually lose who you are. So I said all that to say, Real helped me grow in my knowledge of racial equity, my affirmation. It confirmed things within me that I was already doing, and gave me a larger audience to spread this knowledge, you know?
Absolutely. And one thing I just want to point out and mention, I know that you attended the Teach Conference this past Saturday, just as I did. And as you were speaking, I couldn't help but think about the fact that so many educators like ourselves feel that we have an obligation to come into the classroom and supplement the curriculum that exists, because we know that there are things that our children are not learning about or they should be exposed to. And the fact that Priya and Winona, the two young ladies who are some of the keynote speakers, their work in really trying to push racial literacy is so important. Because the truth of the matter is, yes, we need to see Black and brown people in text. You know, we need to have more diverse books. But the bottom line is, across the country, there needs to be racial education so that people truly have their myths and misconceptions about other people kind of addressed early on, and they really go out into the world after high school, you know, equipped with an understanding of different races and cultures. And I think that would just be tremendous and skyrocketing us into a whole different country. I really do.
Right.
Now, have you had one or more experiences with the Real that has challenged you or helped you to grow in some way?
I think basically being able to speak to people that don't look like me, you know, those experiences I wouldn't have normally had, right? I remember going to school often, you know, after, say, the Trayvon Martin or the Tamir Rice situation, and not being able to talk about it with my colleagues, you know? And so, you know, because there's only a few of us in the building, right? And everybody walking around like, you know, nothing happened, you know?
Right.
And so the other day, a couple days ago, we had the CCW series, the last in the series, Resistant, and it happened to fall on the very day that we were getting the George Floyd, the Derek Chauvin verdict. And I was explaining to Gabe, right, that, you know, it was, you know, I'm a woman of faith, right? And so for me, you know, I believe that everything is orchestrated already, right? So there's nothing is done by happenstance. And so you can't, you know, no one can negate the fact, for me, that we were having this conversation about resistance capital. What do you bring to the table? You know, just speaking about the whole CCW series. What do you bring to the table? What is your wealth? What is your capital? What do you bring to educational system with you? You know, be it from your family, your navigational capital, all of those things, right? And we had that on the day, and so that was just like phenomenal. You know, that we were able to hold space. You know, we were supposed to talk about resistance and familial capital, right? And break and take just a deeper dive into that and break that down. We had already had the 2 other sessions with the other 4. And the fact that this happened that day, I was telling Gabe, like, listen, and Jacinth, it's just like, this was, you know, I don't care what anybody says, this was nothing but God to be able to have that space in the midst of the verdict coming in. Like people were typing in chat, the verdict is in, and if we hadn't used our resistant capital to go against the grain of injustice, the the verdict may have gone some other way, but it was just so happened that it happened that day, so it was just amazing.
And being a woman of faith as well, I think it's unfortunate we've had to have so much tragedy over the last few years, but I also think that tragedy is going to help to push us into a new time and a new way. And I think people had to see some of what's happened in the way that they've seen it to truly understand. And I don't think that we've necessarily had that in the past. But now with the presence of social media and cell phones being so, normalized and videotaping situations, people are really beginning to see just how serious things are. And I think that that's going to ultimately, make a difference. Or at least we hope. At least we hope that it will.
Yeah, we hope.
We hope. So when thinking of the future, what does it look like? And how does the real movement possibly help to influence that future?
So the future of our students' knowledge of who they are grows, right? And how valuable they are, and what wealth they, already have, and what wealth they bring to the table. As I said, be it navigational, linguistic, aspirational, familial, resistant capital, all of that. And our union is being filled with educators who are more aware of their privilege, more socially and racially conscious. So the future of NJEA in New Jersey public schools looks real. Looks, one of your questions was, you asked me about what would a hashtag be, and it's hashtag NJEA, right? And then hashtag keep it real. So at the end of each, just keep it real. And if we do that, we remember to affirm, if we remember that it's all about racial literacy, racial affirmation, racial equity, we can keep it real.
I couldn't have said it better. I agree with you. And I think that keeping it real also means when you're in spaces with people who their ideals just seem so far-fetched, being willing to keep it real with them, check them, educate them, and then hold people accountable in your life for showing up differently or being willing to take space and say, maybe I need to separate myself when it comes to certain things.
Yes.
From all of that, right? Now, in 1 minute or less, can you tell me why the real movement is vital right now?
I'm going to say because if we keep accepting the things we believe we can't change, right? And for me, my son, my 21-year-old son, when the deaths were occurring, he was like, Mom, it's we could, because I was like, you coming to march with me, son? He was like, Mom, we can do all that, but it's really not going to change anything. And that was scary to me. So in the past, we sang about it. We shall overcome, change going to come, what's going on, Marvin Gaye. But now we can resist more and use the words of Angela Davis. She said, I will no longer accept the things I cannot change. That serenity prayer. I am changing the things I cannot accept. And we saw this with the conviction of Derek Chauvin. So we got one, we got one racist, out, but it's time to continue to break down the white racist system. And so that's why real is so vital. So we can continue to break down the system that is keeping us down.
All we can do is one situation at a time, right?
Yeah.
Keep fighting and showing up. And we have to encourage our young people to stop thinking that someone else is going to do it. Because we know even with our work in the unions,
Mm-hmm.
If the people of the past didn't do what they did, we wouldn't have the rights that we have today as educators. And so the same rings true when it comes to any injustices in this world. Like the young people have to show up and train themselves understand they're going to have to do that as well, as they get older. And the only way that's going to come is to show up in numbers. Right. So hopefully, our young people step up. But I think a lot of them have. I think a lot of what we're experiencing is because of the young people. I really do.
Right.
Now, do you have any final thoughts to share with the audience?
I am just so happy to be a member of the Real Movement Advisory Council. You know, I believe I and a handful of us were like some of the original members, you know, and saw it grow. So I'm really excited about it. You know, I love Gabe. Gabe and I were union school grads, you know, for 2015 together. And so we've been rocking together on little teams, you know, here and there when we've, you know, been through ACES training and different little things. So I'm just so proud of him and under his leadership and guidance with this real movement, you know, it has been transformative. And so I'm grateful. And come on along with this, you know, get on the bus, you know, as they would say, get on this bus because this train, or get on this train because it's a moving. It's a movement.
That's right. Let's encourage them. Let's bring more people to the movement.
That's it.
Dr. ThrBak, thank you for blessing us with your presence, your knowledge, your experience. We appreciate you. I appreciate you in the work that you do. And to our audience, to learn more about the Real Movement, visit our website, real.njea.org. And until next time, peace.
Peace.